Welcome to the Good Girl Podcast. I am Cameo King. There wasn't a space for women to be themselves in every facet of their lives. The Good Girl Podcast was created to offer that space, to have conversations with a gutted truth without restriction. Join us every week as we unpack your own questions and confessions in this good and safe space. Hey, y'all! That sounded real official, didn't it? Real official. But I really just want to let you guys know this really is a good and safe space to have those conversations, those confessions, those topics that are often taboo. But we really need to have them to get to the heart of who we are, to get to the best version of ourselves. So I'm really excited about this topic. I'm really excited about this season because every season we go deeper. Every season, I hope that you become a better person as much as I become a better person. So be along with me on this journey. First things first, all Papa freaks on the honey snow. Make sure you are following us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on the TikToks. I'll be TikToking. But make sure you join us there. And that's actually where our first confession comes from. It's around motherhood, and I think it's one of those conversations that we have in private. And when I say in private, not even with your girlfriends, within yourself, because of this idea of what we know about motherhood. But before we get into it, I want to say two things. Y'all see this new space? We're in a new space and I love it. Always trying to go a level higher. I was going to say a level deeper. It doesn't matter, but we taking it on up. Oh, that sounded good. I love it. Didn't that sound? Taking it in. Okay, almost that. But number two, you probably hear her laughing. I want to introduce to some. Right. Most of y'all know her if y'all been following us. But my bestie, my ride or die, I said I wasn't going to say that, but she been with me in the trenches, just supporting me, Danielle Moore. She also happens to be a licensed mental health therapist, two businesses, Uncouched Therapy, as well as the Refresh Wellness Center. So welcome, Danny.
Oh my gosh, back at it again. We in the studio chatting with the friends. Hey, we back at it, y'all.
We back at it. I'm so excited to have you here because she is, you live in Dallas.
I live in Dallas.
You live in Dallas, and we're in Michigan right now.
We are in Michigan in the studio.
Oh, it's a little cold today, though.
You know, it's a little brisque for my Dallas blood. You know, it's nice and warm and sunny there. So these Michigan gray skies and these 60-degree temperatures. Oh man!
All on it, man.
Hey,
working and okay. All right.
You know what? It's warm in the D where I live. I live in the D Dallas.
We talking about the real D, but anyway. So let's hop into this confession. And always, I want to remind you guys that you can send in your confessions. We are also accepting them anonymously, so you can submit that anonymously, or if you want to be on the show, you can give us your full name, everything, and we will consider you to be a guest on the show. So let's hop into this confession about motherhood. So I did a little TikTok about this and it got so much feedback, so much traction. And so I thought to bring it here. I also got a lot of DMs and emails. And so it's a much needed conversation. And I've never heard someone be this raw about motherhood. So it comes from Nicole Powell on Facebook. And she says, if I would have known what I know now, motherhood would have never, she put never in all caps, would have never been on the table for me. I despise motherhood. I hate my sleep has been interrupted for 2 years. I hate cooking in the evening. She said, I hate to cook. I hate finding snacks, making bottles, and changing diarrhea diapers consistently for 15. I don't think I've ever done anything for 15 hours straight. 15 hours straight. She said this was her Saturday. Being a mother, and I'll end it here because it was a really long post, but I'll end it here. She says, being a mother is not aligned with my soul's purpose. Wow.
Wow. She said her soul's purpose.
And so I really want to, Danny, set the table so we can have a meaningful, fruitful conversation for mothers who feel like this and people who desire motherhood and people who are like, I don't know about motherhood. And even I'm gonna throw I was going to throw fatherhood in there, but I think mothers oftentimes carry the weight of parenthood. This don't mean fathers don't. Let me be real clear. This doesn't mean that fathers don't do their job. But I want to set the table of the fact that she says soul's purpose.
Yeah.
Because she didn't say career.
Nope.
She didn't say finances. She didn't say relationships. She said soul's purpose. And that's different than all those other things. That's what you are called to do. That is when God had a thought about you. He said, this is why I am designing a Cameo. This is why I'm designing a Danny. That is your soul's purpose. So can you talk about the role our soul's purpose plays in our satisfaction, our peace, our mental wellness in life?
So have you ever heard of a midlife crisis? If you've ever heard of a midlife crisis, it is when someone comes to the realization that how they are living is not true to who they are and connected to their purpose and destiny. And when you experience this overwhelming need to be who it is that you were put on this earth to be, you tend to do extreme things that seem extreme to other people, but that are not extreme to you. You start to understand the importance of you being able to express yourself. When God created us, he gave us all a specific purpose. And the more we learn about ourselves, the more we become self-aware, the more we come into what that purpose is. What are you good at? What do you do naturally, right? Before I ever became a licensed clinician, I was in the space of therapist, so to speak, right? And then I had a divine revelation from God where God said, I called you counselor, now go get your credentials. But I found myself in that space repetitively. And when I go all the way back to my childhood, even from a child, I was managing adults and their emotions from a child. And so if you are living in this world that we live in, where everyone has all these ideas about who you are supposed to be, starting with your caregivers, most parents think that their kids are an extension of them. And so you're being indoctrinated with all these things about who they think you should be. Every now and then you'll get some parents who, feel like, you know what? I feel like this is this person's God-given ability, like God created them to be. You know how you see some little kids, they're like 2 years old and they're laying hands on people, or they just naturally pick up some drums and things that they did as a child. If you pay attention and lean into, you can start seeing where their gifts and their talents lie. What God gave to you that you didn't really have to, you might have had to go to school to nurture it and perfect and master your craft, but something that you are just, that comes to you naturally, that you have an innate knowing about doing. You just do. That there is your soul's purpose. We spend so much time being distracted and so much time living up to other people's expectations that it's often hard to figure out what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And so that unlearning and that commitment to being self-aware and growing is going to be paramount in coming into a space where you're understanding your soul's purpose. And it sounds like this is what this lady came to. She said, I am not, this was not my soul's purpose. And to say that as a woman on the surface sounds like an act of radical resistance, because we've been indoctrinated with the whole idea that women were created to be the wives of men and the mothers of children. And then anything else outside of that, okay. But the way that our culture and society is set up, women are indoctrinated with, mothering and wifing.
Yeah.
And so your purpose is something that they expect for you to put on the back burner, or that's not something that you are supposed to pursue, because those things are primary.
Yeah.
And so to get a woman to speak out in that way, to put in all caps, motherhood would have never been on the table.
Listen. Protect her at all costs.
Listen.
Protect her. Because I think even with her confession, some women got freed, like, wow, I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone. And even the conversation that we had as well, and the revelation that came to me, and made me think about motherhood. Confession. Listen, because we're going to get to your confession, that made me think about motherhood differently, and the things that I would require if I were to become a mother. Or become someone's mother, because we're older, people got kids, now you get into relationships, you can quickly become a mother of 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. The things that I would desire are different.
Yes.
Because I am afraid of the woman that I would become if I dropped what I am called to do and focused on something else.
As you should be. You should be definitely afraid. I made a statement a few years back, and I said, life is not about evading sin. It is about fulfilling purpose. And it would be a sin to leave this earth and not fulfill your purpose.
And there are so many things, you talk about distractions, there are so many things in this society that tell us, and that a lot of women repeat, and I think that allows women to digest their decisions. And let's be clear, I'm not saying that it's easy, because this is what you've been indoctrinated with, that motherhood, that being a wife is satisfaction enough to live your life, right?
According to who?
According to society, according to what they say, I think it is scary for some women to begin to step out of that. But the truth is, a lot of women, according to not just what Cameo has said, but women who've been on my show, women, shows that I haven't aired. I don't air all my shows, y'all. Shows that I haven't aired, private conversations, that you are literally just existing because motherhood, and I'll call it wifehood or wife life is what people call it, does not satisfy your soul, and you begin to resent, your husband or your marriage. You begin to resent your kids. And so it's almost like a poison that is eating from the inside out, because you have decided to, or you've succumbed to what society has said is right.
Succumb is a good word.
Girl, instead of listening, and I want to say this, that it is not easy, because everything around you tells you that motherhood and wifehood, like that is the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I still have it in my phone, and then we'll get to your confession, but some woman had posted, she asked a question along the lines of like, what else? I'm looking for it. I may just try to refer to it. She said something like, what else do y'all do? I find satisfaction in motherhood and being a wife. I have no desire to live for anything else. And it was I don't think she was trying to attack women who weren't mothers or wives. But my question was like, how do you exist? Because what's going to happen when your children are grown and no longer desire you in the same way that they desired you or needed you at 4, at 6, at 12? And I know children still need their parents at 25. But what's going to happen when instead of needing you 8 hours a day, they need you for 1 hour out the week? What's going to happen?
What's going to happen is they're going to end up in therapy with me. Yeah. They'll end up sitting on my virtual couch that we call uncouched therapy. But yeah, you're going to end up in therapy because you have enmeshed relationships with your children, and you have poor boundaries because you lack identity for yourself outside of being a mother, and you didn't spend any time investing in your own personal growth and leaning into your own purpose. You are to steward little humans for a season. That is not your life's purpose. It's just not. There's a relationship that you're supposed to have with your children as adults. Absolutely. But you will find yourself anxious, depressed, overwhelmed, among a lot of other things, having sickness and disease in your body because you have your attachment style to your children is creating distress within your body and in your system because you don't know anything else, because you used your children as an excuse not to lean into what your soul's purpose actually is.
Ooh, baby, as an excuse. And
an excuse.
And I think that's one thing that I will preach to the ends of the earth, but it's about being accountable and telling yourself the truth.
Yes.
You ain't got to tell me the truth. You ain't got to send me no confession, but tell yourself. Tell yourself
Please
the
tell
truth.
yourself the truth
About the decisions you've made, or the power that you've given something in your life. One thing... You got something to say too. We
go fight. I just wanted to say it's not easy though.
Yep.
You know, I don't want to minimize the fact that children and spouses are work. They are work. Y'all are the real MVPs. My hat goes off to y'all. I'm not in no way, shape, or form trying to minimize motherhood or parenthood. In any way, shape, or form. Children are a lot of work. You have, little crumb snatchers dictating your schedule, literally. Your schedule and what you can and cannot do. And if you don't have adequate help, which far too many parents don't have, if you don't have adequate help and resources to make sure that you're able to manage your house and your children and your life in that way, well, guess what? All your time is going to get sucked up. So then you won't have an opportunity to lean into that self-awareness, to lean into your purpose until your children are of age for you to try to do that. But I want to say, as hard as it is, you have to have good boundaries. The B word. We don't like that B word, honey.
The B word.
You got to have good boundaries with your children and with your spouse, and you have to practice self-care. Self-care and self-maintenance, while considered an act of radical resistance, they are necessary. And the people to whom you are responsible, you will not be able to care for them long term. It is not sustainable for you to care for them without making sure you don't have what you need first. And a lot of people we've been indoctrinated with as a culture, especially moms, with mom guilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Them kids better be first. That husband or them kids better be first. It better be anybody but you. But baby, if you fall out, then what?
And it's moms versus moms too.
Oh yeah.
We have friends.
Mom shaming.
Listen, and I had one friend shame another friend because she decided to move because that's something she wanted to do. She decided to, move to another state because she wanted to pursue her career. And my other friend mom shamed her, but her kids, I said, but the kids got a whole daddy and they got to finish school. They're going to be all right. You was like, F them kids, And the one thing that I mentioned and I've said consistently is very much put yourself first. Mm-hmm. But I love the fact that you highlighted that it's not easy.
It's not.
Based on the society we live in and the demands that exist.
Yes.
And the type of human that you want your child to become. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm not saying that you can do this tomorrow, and I'm not saying that you made this decision highly aware of its impact on your life or its impact on your child's life. So this, if you're listening, I hope this doesn't come off as a heavyweight, like, oh my God. No, you're just coming into this idea that this is what's happening. This is why your soul aches, right? And now that you have this newfound information, now you can begin to make moves, whether it's taking 5 minutes for yourself to figure out what you want to do, or knowing that in however many years that this is what I'm going to begin to work on, right? Or this is what I want to begin to work towards. Now, I want to, before we get into your confession, because I think your confession is huge, just really quickly, I think the history of Black women when it comes to kids is important as well. Absolutely. And just the history of women and what we have been allowed to do. I know historically we weren't allowed to have jobs, right? Mm-hmm. Purpose is something newer that we now have the mental capacity to think about.
Yeah.
So if grandma, all she could do is get a job teaching, real life story, and grandpa was the sharecropper, was the person that was bringing in the money. And so therefore grandma took care of the house. I think in her time, that was her purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
But we are being ushered into a new time where we can access this idea of purpose, where we do have the mental capacity to begin to think about what else has God called me to do.
I agree with that, we are in a different time and a different season, but I do want to expound on that purpose thing. Mm-hmm. I think that even back then, women had more of a purpose. I mean, you've seen women in the Bible all the time who would just rise up like, so let's be clear. But historically speaking, women have been oppressed even from the times of the Bible, and we have been the property of men and our fathers, our husbands and fathers. And so we weren't allowed to be in spaces where we could just fulfill purpose. We weren't allowed to be in spaces where we could think about doing anything but being a wife or a mother or a dutiful daughter. Mm-hmm. And so even if we did have purpose down on the inside of us, we weren't allowed, it was prohibited. Mm-hmm. And so we weren't permitted to be able to do that. And so I just want to say, but it doesn't erase that the purpose was there. And so the legacy of that is still alive and well. And oftentimes we have children before we figure out who we are, before we even know or understand if we really have the capacity to do that beyond physically growing a human inside of our bodies and giving birth.
Yeah, that's real. So I want to switch this conversation up a little bit to talk about the conversations we have behind the scenes about what motherhood meant to us, and specifically what it meant to you at a point in your life, and how your perspective has definitely shifted. And I want to say this for me, and I think this has been the case for a lot of women. Now that we know, or we have some idea that motherhood isn't this cakewalk, and I don't think anyone necessarily painted this picture that it was a complete cakewalk, but that it takes a lot, that you will not have the same time and attention as you did when you were single, and that it could very much, I don't want to say distract you from your soul's purpose. Like, if I decide to create another human with someone I'm with, like I need, baby, we got to have a housekeeper. We got to have a nanny. If you still want me to be the best version of myself. These are some things that I desire. Now, I know life doesn't always play out the way we want it to play out.
Absolutely.
But if I could set myself up well. Yeah. And even look, I'm even like, look, if he come in a picture with the with the kid or two, I hope the mother is involved, because now we got 3 people raising this 1 or 2 children. Yes, 3 people raising this 1 or 2, these children. So, and I always thought motherhood was just going to happen. I never considered it a yes or no. I thought you were going to you were going to get married and just have kids.
As did I.
It as though it was an option. But on to your point, you was team F them kids. So tell us how because before you were pro family, Danny.
Man.
Transitioned.
Oh, honey, I did. So, I mean, I was so I was adamant that I was going to get married and have children and have my own kids and have my own family. I was very, very much so looking forward to doing that. And I've come to the realization through more self-awareness, through therapy, because, yes, I'm a therapist who's in therapy, and just my healing journey, that really I wanted to have my own children and my own family to kind of restore, not to kind of restore, to absolutely restore the family dysfunction that I experienced. I wanted to be able to have my own family, to heal the areas where I've been traumatized as a child and as an adult and as a person. I wanted to be married, to heal that void of, feeling abandoned and what have you, just to kind of address some of the trauma that I experienced. And now that I am, on this side of the healing journey, because we are ever evolving. F them kids.
Can I read what you? I should have you look at it first. I'm like, can I read what you sent me in my DM?
You sure can read it, honey.
So she said, listen, self-awareness has me here. I had to say to myself, girl, you don't want none of that shit. And only wanted it to attempt to correct the trauma that you experienced with your own family dysfunction. Mm-hmm. I am finally choosing me and not connecting my identity to being a wife and mother. I am officially team #F them kids. She ain't say F. She used a whole word. F them kids. After years, mind you. And I've known Danny, and you've always, after years of longing to have my own family, I love it here. And so I think,
after years of longing to have my own family. I love it here. I recognize that with managing what it takes for me to show up and be who it is that I am, I'm a called to affect positive change in the lives of people who have mental health needs, which means I have to be on top of my own mental health. I don't have the capacity to be here, there, and everywhere with, of independent variable that can just completely disrupt at any given time. Wow, yeah. Not with the level of work that I do. Mm-hmm. Children are disruptive. Mm-hmm. And as much as I love my nephew sons, my god babies, my nieces and nephews, baby, I am grateful at this point in time in my life that I didn't physically give birth to children. I'm also grateful that I didn't give birth to children at a time in my life where I might have been a less than great parent. And that I might have traumatized my child because I was smothering them, trying to make sure that they weren't traumatized because of the trauma that I experienced.
And that's I think, central to your confession, and something Absolutely. That I want folks to take home and really think about, just how important self-awareness is in our process to becoming who we're called to be and how we impact our children. Because a lot of folks, whether we know it or not, we have children and we make decisions out of our trauma.
Yes.
Trying to fix our trauma. I told you just earlier, I was dating a guy and he said he wanted kids. And I said, why do you want kids? He said, well, I want to fix what happened to me. And I said, baby, no, you can't, you go to therapy for that. You can't do that. And just not being aware of who we are, of our triggers, of our trauma, can cause us to make life-changing decisions that do not solve anything.
Nothing.
But cause more disruption and pulls us further away from our purpose and what God has called us to do.
I'd like to say on the flip side of that, I've shared this in a previous podcast episode, that the actual reason that I, don't have a living, breathing little human is because, the time that I did get pregnant and I chose to terminate was directly connected to my trauma. I literally stood in the abortion clinic and talked to my baby. And at this point in time, I had no credentials. I had taken 12 college credits or something. And I came to the realization that I did not want to be with my child's father. I'd actually broken up with him and then found out that I was pregnant. And I came to the conclusion that my child would have to constantly be in the care of somebody else while I was in school and working to make sure that I could provide a better life for them. And immediately my trauma showed up and said, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. I couldn't handle the idea that somebody could do what had happened to me as a child. And as a child, I experienced physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, all of these things. And I ended up in foster care. And so for me, I made that entire decision out of trauma, out of fear, and all of those things. And guess what? I would have subjected my child to that version of me. And so whether anybody thinks the decision that I made was right or wrong, the point that I'm making is I made a decision out of my trauma. I would have been making a decision even to keep the child. It still would have been out of my trauma because I would have been trying to correct all of the stuff that happened to me. It still would have been trauma informed. And when you make trauma informed decisions, that don't work out well. It doesn't. It shows up when you fail to address your trauma in the appropriate ways, which would be in therapy, self-discovery, self-awareness, and seeking God about your healing. When you fail to address your trauma in those ways and you start having kids, you start getting in the wrong relationships, you start making connections and doing things, you're headed for self-destruction. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not going to work. And self-destruction looks different on different people.
Absolutely.
And we cover it up in different ways.
Oh, yeah.
We cover it up by
addiction.
and not just addiction, even perfectionism.
Yes.
We cover it up by trying to create this image that everything is going well.
Yes.
We project onto other people that motherhood and being a wife is the way and the only way.
Absolutely.
It shows up in different ways. Mm-hmm. It shows up in overworking yourself.
Oh, yes.
It shows. And so let's be clear. The manifestation of this just isn't something bad, right? It's so much more. And also what I want to do is I don't want you to think that if you decided to become a mother, right? If you made this decision that this is the end, that I make this big wrong, like God's grace is still sufficient.
Yes, it is.
God knew you were going to make these decisions before God, like everything, omniscient. God knew the circumstances that would create the person that you are now. And God is going to use that to call you to your purpose. God is going to use, but the first step, y'all, you gotta be honest. You have to be honest about why you made the decisions and your role in it. So we've made it obvious that society has a lot to do with it. We've made it obvious that the historical nature of Black women, of women, the influence of the church, biblical times, patriarchy, we've made it clear that this is a part of your decision. But there's also a role that you've played in it. And that is again, you ain't got to tell it to me. You ain't got to tell it to your mama. You ain't got to tell it to tell it to yourself and audibly say, this is what, that is your first step. This is why I made this decision, or this is why I continue to make this decision. That is your first step in getting free and becoming who you're called to be and walking in your purpose. Because what we don't want to do is what I mentioned earlier. We don't want this poison of a lie to continue to eat away at you. We don't want that to happen. We want you. Because I need you. What's the song in church? I need you. You need me. Because your purpose, whether you want to believe it or not, affects the world. Yeah. It could affect me, my mama, my future kids. Who knows? It's going to show up. And I say that selfishly because if your purpose is connected to me and you caught up in something, I'm coming for you. But it's I just don't believe it's ever too late. So I just want to encourage you to be honest, and it has and be because you can even go to therapy. But if you're not honest with your therapist,
can we just?
You can lie to your therapist, and your therapist can prescribe you something or ask you certain questions. But if you're not honest with her,
I can't help you. I cannot help you if you are not honest. People show up in therapy and waste their money or waste their insurance benefits. I find that, people who, pay, there are a lot of people who just pay for therapy out of pocket. They are very much so committed, and they tend to show up differently. And there are a lot of people, of course, who have benefits that show up differently too, but far too many people come into therapy playing.
Yeah.
Coming to therapy, not being honest with themselves. Coming to therapy, not really wanting healing, just wanting someone to be, a sounding board or agreeable to whatever it is that they, feel like venting about in that space. The goal of therapy is to help you to come to your own conclusions and to get you into a space where you can get to your desired outcomes. And if you are not honest with me, if you are not honest with yourself, I cannot help you.
Cannot help you. So that is my goal, right? That is our goal today. And I want to point back to what we started with, was her confession on motherhood, Nicole Powell's confession on motherhood, and the bold step she took to be honest that motherhood does not align with her soul's purpose, because only there can she really begin to start to finding solutions so she can get back aligned with her soul's purpose, whether it's resources, whether it's help. And let's be clear, these are some things that also came up on the TikTok, things that people said like, well, you just need support, which could be true, additional support, but it's something about that soul's purpose. Mm-hmm. It's something about that. If you do something, I don't care how much support, how much help you have, if it's not aligned with your soul's purpose,
it ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna work. So thank you for listening. I hope this really impacted your life, touched your spirit. As always, I'll include information to connect to Uncouched Therapy. And if you're in the Dallas area, to connect to the Refresh Wellness Center.
If you're in Texas at all, I service the entire state of Texas. All of our sessions are virtual. And so you can log on to refreshwellnesscenter.com, uncouchedtherapy.com, Danielle Moore, LCSW.com.
And we'll definitely connect you. As always, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at The Good Girl Podcast, on TikTok, The Good Girl Podcast, and most importantly, we welcome your confessions. I am Cameo King, and thank you for listening to The Good Girl Podcast.